So we have just seen how Pokarasati, this Brahmin, doesn't really understand what is going on. And the reason why he does not understand is because he has been immersed in the 5 hindrances and the 5 senses, and he has not attained that which is beyond that, which is the 2 jhanas. That's the reason why, the first 2 jhanas, that is the reason why he's still trapped and doesn't see things properly. So now we are going to carry on and see how this sutta ends. The last part of this also has a nice section on the Brahma Viharas, which we will come to very soon. So this is what happens next. Of the 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for making merit and succeeding in the skillful, which do they say is the most fruitful? So these are the 5 things we're talking about: the truth, the fervor, or the asceticism, if you like, and then the generosity and the recitation and the what was the last one? Recitation and chaga. No, renunciation. That's right. Celibacy was the last one. Yeah. Okay. And generosity. So, what do they say is the most fruitful? It is generosity. They say is the most fruitful. That's what the Brahmins say. What does the Buddha say? And I think, what does the Buddha say? Well, there isn't really an answer in the text. Yeah. So this is kind of the Buddha says starts then talking about something else. But what would the Buddha say about this? Of these 5 things, what is the most fruitful? What was that? So I would say that the Buddha would say he would probably analyze again, right? Depending on how you give, depending on what you mean by these things, how you practice them. So it is kind of not clear which one is the most fruitful. You cannot really say. It depends on the context. It depends on the situation. So all of these things have their place on the path, but at different places and different circumstances. But they say generosity, and so the Buddha then replies. What do you think, student? Suppose a Brahmin was setting up a big sacrifice. Then 2 Brahmins came along thinking to participate. Then one of those Brahmins thought, "Oh, I hope that I alone get the best seat, the best drink, and the best alms food in the refectory, not some other Brahmin." All right? But it's possible that some other Brahmin gets the best seat, the best drink, and the best alms food in the refectory, thinking some other Brahmin has got the best seat, the best drink, the best alms food. They get angry and bitter. So even though you are creating a sacrifice and you want to feed these other Brahmins, they end up getting angry, which is kind of the opposite of the purpose of generosity. Purpose of generosity is to make people happy, not to make them angry and bitter. What do the Brahmins say is the result of this? So in other words, if you are generous, but the result is that people don't appreciate it and they get angry and bitter, what happens then? If you give me coffee and I'm not happy with it, and I get angry and bitter, what is the result of giving that coffee? Does that mean it's a bad karma because you're not actually doing anything helpful? And of course, we know the answer. The answer has to do with intention, right? That's kind of the answer in that thing. So even if I were very stupid and got angry and bitter, then still it would be good karma on the part of the giver. So then the Brahmin student says, where the Gautama, Brahmins don't give gifts to others so that others will get angry and upset. Rather, they give only out of sympathy. So the reason we give for the right reason, then of course it is good karma. However, if you do give something so that someone else gets angry, then it's no longer giving. And then it's a problem, because then your intention is bad. So the point that is being made here is that generosity in itself is kind of neutral. Intention The factor behind it is what actually is important. That's kind of the point. And that is always the point with kamma. Kamma is always about intention. What is the thing behind it? In that case, isn't compassion a sixth ground for making merit? In that case, compassion is a sixth ground for making merit. So he's kind of expanding out here the idea of the Brahmins, and to show that you need to analyze these things more carefully to fully understand what is going on. And so what is going on here is that your intention is what matters. And this is a very important principle in Buddhism. And it's a principle that often we don't take seriously enough, that our intention is what matters. It means that you can do the same act of kindness, the same act of generosity, and you can make a lot of good karma, a little bit of good karma, bad karma, depending on what your intention is. So when you do an act of kindness, build up the good intention inside. Know that you are doing it for the right reason. Have a sense of metta, karuna when you do it, that you really want to give. You do it with the right attitude, with a sense of service, a sense of confidence, a sense of all of these qualities. And if you do it in that way, then any act of kindness becomes very powerful as a consequence, simply because of your mental state. Your mental state is very significant to determine the power of an action that you do. And so very often people will ask you as a monastic, oh, I did this, is it good or bad? And the answer is, I don't know, it depends on your mind state. What was your mind state like when you did this? Whatever it might be. And so very often we can't really say whether an action itself is good or bad. It all depends on what lies behind it. And so very important to keep that in mind, because it gives a lot of nuance to what is really good karma, what is bad karma. Sometimes people may look like they're doing something bad, but actually, because the intention behind it was good, it wasn't bad after all. There may be times when it looks like you're breaking your precepts, and maybe kind of on paper you are breaking it, but then you look at the content of the intention, and actually it was still good karma, even though you were breaking it theoretically. Practically, you're actually making good karma because you are doing it coming from the right place. And so the final analysis when it comes to making good and bad karma is not the act itself. It is how, the reason why you're doing it. And it opens up possibilities for understanding karma that are much, much broader than we normally think about when we think about doing good and doing bad. What is driving the action is what really matters. And once we have that kind of attitude, we can judge any kind of difficult ethical dilemma, like things like euthanasia or abortion or stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. All of these kind of things. Robin Hood, that's what he famously did. We can ask what is the ethical, what is the karma in this kind of situation, and because we can base it on the intention. So Robin Hood, did he do bad or did he do good? Well, probably did a little bit of bad. Stealing from the rich is not good regardless. But the fact that he gave it to the poor, it kind of his intention was probably not as bad as usually the intention for stealing, because it was the broader idea was one of compassion and kindness. Although the actual act of stealing is hard to see how that can come from compassion. So anyway, just to kind of remind you of the importance of intention in Buddhism, and that is kind of the final analysis in all of these things. So compassion is definitely a sixth ground here for making merit. So then carrying on, of the 5 things that the Brahmins prescribe for making merit and succeeding in the skillful, where do you usually find them? Among lay people or monastics, renunciates? And the answer is mostly among monastics and less so among lay people. For a lay person has many requirements, duties, issues and undertakings. They can't always tell the truth, be ascetic, be celibate, do lots of recitation and be very generous. But a monastic has few requirements, duties, issues, and undertakings, and they can always tell the truth, be ascetic, celibate, do lots of recitation, and be very generous. So now we have turned everything backwards. In the beginning, he was saying that the layperson, was able to live a better life, more in terms of the wholesome than the monastic, and now the Buddha has kind of made him come all the way around, and now he's saying the opposite of where he started. So it's kind of interesting. The Buddha is very skilled in kind of bringing things out, kind of very gently and bringing it about, and suddenly he has turned this person completely around, now seeing things in a different way. So it's kind of fascinating. So then. Of the 5 things that Brahmins prescribe for making merit and succeeding in the skillful, I usually find them among renunciants, less so among lay people. Then the Buddha says, I say that the 5 things prescribed by the Brahmins for making merit and are prerequisites of the mind for developing a mind free of enmity and ill will. Free of enmity and ill will. Now we are moving into the era of metta and karuna and the Brahma Viharas. And so the Buddha is saying that instead of these things being an end in themselves, instead of these things being kind of the purpose of the spiritual life, these are just the beginning of the spiritual life. These are the prerequisites, these are the foundations for going further. So you can see again how the Buddha is kind of taking this and one step further, kind of pulling, kind of gradually bringing Subha along to see the larger picture here of what is going on. These are preliminary things. So you are celibate. You are celibate for a reason. You are truthful. Here truth probably means right view. You start off with a certain amount of right view, and you also tell the truth. You have that for a reason, right view. You begin with seeing the world in the right way. This is the way the world is, and the Buddha tells you the way it is, and you use that for this practice. You are celibate because of that. You recite the scriptures for that reason, to develop the mind, etc. You are generous for that reason. That is also one of these things that bring the mind forward in this way. So all of these factors, they come from this. And you are also ascetic if you're practicing asceticism, giving up the defilements for the same reason. So how does this actually work? And here is the Buddha tells us how this works, how these things are the foundation for developing the mind free of enmity and ill will. Take a mendicant who speaks the truth, thinking, I am truthful. They find inspiration in the meaning and the teaching. They find joy connected with the teaching. You may recognize this. This is a phrase that you find very similarly in a large number of places in the suttas. Later on we will have a look at the Mahanama Sutta. The Mahanama Sutta is the 6 recollections, how you recall the Chaga, the Sila, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha and the Devatas. And these 6 recollections are for the purpose of gaining samadhi, to move in the mind towards meditation, for overcoming the defilements. And the way it is described there is exactly like this. This is exactly the same way that is described there. So in a sense, those 6 recollections are not the end of the story. There are other ways of doing this that also give the same result. And one way is to be truthful and then being inspired by that truthfulness. So here truth means mostly that we are truthful in the way we live our lives. So you think, I am truthful. This is part of the idea of sila. I'm living a life of virtue. And when you remember that, you feel inspired in the meaning. Atta Veda is the Pali word. Veda, as I have mentioned before many times here, I think, and elsewhere, Veda is this word which means both feeling and understanding at the same time. Veda is related to Vedana. It is also related to Vidya, which is insight and knowledge. So it's both kind of feeling something and also understanding something. And in English, the idea of inspiration is very similar to that. When you are inspired, you feel inspired. It's a feeling that you have. You have an energy in the mind, a positive outlook. Yeah? You want to get going. You want to do something. But inspiration also means a sense of understanding. You have that feeling because you understand what is going on. Wow, that's really inspiring. Yeah, you understand, and then you want to act. And so what we are seeing here is that you are inspired by the meaning, the atta. The meaning is the purpose, where we are going. When you know that you are truthful, you are living in the right way, you know that you are heading towards something positive, you can see that you are fulfilling the practice, you're moving towards the goal, moving towards what the Buddha says fulfills this path and moves towards the purpose of this path. And you know that, so you are inspired by the meaning. You're inspired by the movement towards samadhi, the movement towards nibbana, the movement towards all the goal of the path, because you can see that what you're doing is leading in that direction. At that time, your defilements go down because you are inspired by the purpose of the path. So the defilements are no longer there. Instead, the positive qualities are coming up. And you're also inspired by the teaching, by the Dhamma, because that teaching, you know that that teaching is leading to that goal, leading to that purpose. The Dhamma and the Atta, two sides. One is the foundation, the teachings, the tells you the path to the goal, and the other one is the goal itself, the atta, and you're inspired by all of this because you know you are truthful. Yes, I am truthful. I'm moving in that direction. And from that inspiration then comes the joy connected with the teaching, which is here the pamudja, I think. I think so. That is the idea here. And this is what you see throughout the sutta, this idea using the wholesomeness of the path, using the positive qualities that we develop to feel inspired. And then the whole process of meditation arising out of that. You sit down, you watch the breath, you bring in the inspiration as you do the breath, and the meditation comes together as a consequence. There you are. This is kind of an expansion on the Mahanama Sutta that we will see later on. And I say, joy connected with the skillful is a prerequisite of the mind for developing a mind free of enmity and ill will. So I've just shown you how that is the case. It is a prerequisite, because it helps you to move the mind in that direction. These are the things that kind of form the foundation of the practice of meditation. That's why it is a prerequisite. What is the word for prerequisite there? Does anyone have the Pali in front of them? Parikara, there you are. So it actually is like a requisite, quite literally. And as I have mentioned here also before, and I've probably mentioned everything here before, but I will mention it again, and that's kind of the way it goes. So the idea of a requisite, one of the things the Buddha talks about generosity, he says that the best way to be generous is to consider the act of generosity as a requisite of the mind. Here you see exactly the same thing again, the same idea. When something is a requisite of the mind, or it is an ornament of the mind, chitta alankara. Alankara is an ornament. Chitta parikara is a requisite of the mind. So the idea again, so you can see how all the suttas, they kind of cross-reference each other. The same ideas occurring in different places, in different contexts, everything coming together like this. And so it's a requisite of the mind because it allows the mind to use that, to develop it further. So it becomes like something you use to enable the development of the mind in this way. So this is kind of inspiring. So now, do you want to be more truthful to get that requisite? What do you say, anyone? Good idea, isn't it? Yeah, but this does inspire you. And when you hear these things, okay, for goodness sake, I should be doing this. if sila leads to this, if generosity leads to this, it is really important. It's incredibly, it's so important. You should never really forego an opportunity to do an act of kindness, because you are creating the requisite for samadhi. You are creating an ornament for the mind. You're creating a beautiful mind. You are purifying the mind of defilements just like you're purifying gold. This is another simile found in the suttas. The purification of gold, the refinement of gold, is similar to the refinement of the mind. You get rid of defilements, the gold becomes pure. Get rid of defilements of the mind becomes pure. You're developing a beautiful, delightful, happy, attractive mind which really feels good to live with, and also creating the requisites that make that mind, enable the mind to then go further and actually achieve samadhi as well. Here, achieve freedom from enmity and ill will, which is a similar kind of idea. So, so the idea here is to kind of feel a sense of importance of these things. The more powerfully you feel the importance of these things on the path, the more powerful will be your ability to do these things. Why? Because you have right view. This is basically what right view is about. Understanding the connection between these various factors, how they develop the mind. The stronger that right view, the more power you will have to achieve these foundations in the practice. All right, let's go on. Take a mendicant who is ascetic, who is burning up the defilements, tapasi, who is celibate, who practices the brahmacharya, who does lots of recitation, and who is very generous. Thinking, I am very generous, they find inspiration in the meaning and the teaching. They find joy connected with the teaching. So in each of these cases, you use the fact that you are practicing these things in the way to inspire you and then lift the mind up, brighten the mind, and then the meditation comes out of that. And very often it is quite automatic. If you live a very good life, then the reality is that this just happens when you sit down and watch the breath. That's kind of the ideal way for this to happen. So, okay, then what? I say that joy connected with the skillful is a requisite of the mind for developing a mind free of enmity and ill will. I said that these 5 things prescribed by the Brahmins for making merit are prerequisites or requisites of the mind for developing a mind free of enmity and ill will. So, this is the foundation for the metta practice. Now we're moving on stage by stage, coming to the actual development of metta. When he had spoken, Subha said to him, Worthy Gautama, I have heard that the ascetic Gautama knows a path to company with divinity. So divinity here is Brahma, and the company with divinity is Brahma Savyahata, something like that. Sahavyata. Is that correct? Okay, Sahavyata. Okay, close enough. And so now we are really moving towards the idea of the Brahma Viharas, because the path to divinity, that is the path to living like Brahma. The path to Brahma means you dwell together with Brahma. So here he's basically asking the Buddha, well, what are these Brahma Viharas? How are they developed? That's basically what he's asking. And it is kind of interesting, because he is a Brahmin. And of course, the main things that the Brahmin did, they worshipped Brahma, and they were said to be the kinsmen of Brahma. They were the family of Brahma. And it's a bit kind of ironic that he has to ask the Buddha to the path to Brahma when they supposedly are the kinsmen of Brahma. But of course, that's what happens, because the Buddha obviously is the one who has practiced these things, so he is actually able to answer these things properly. And you find this kind of paradox in a few different places in the suttas, where the Brahmins end up asking the Buddha on the pathway to Brahma. In other words, the Brahma Viharas. What do you think, student? Is the village of Nalakara nearby? Yes, it is, sir. What do you think, student? Suppose a person was born and raised in Nalakara, and as soon as they left the town, some people asked them for the road to Nalakara. Would they be slow or hesitant to answer? No, worthy Gautama. Why is that? Because they were born and raised in Nalakara. They were well acquainted with all the roads to that village. So if you have been born in the village, then you know all the roads. Kind of obvious. Still, it is possible they might be slow or hesitant to answer. But the Buddha is never slow or hesitant when questions about the realm of divinity or the practice that leads to the realm of divinity. I understand divinity, the realm of divinity, and the practice that leads to the realm of divinity, practicing in accordance with which one is reborn in the realm of divinity. And so this is typical of the Buddha. You understand what it means, divinity. What does it mean to be divine? What does it mean to be like a Brahma? What is the corresponding realm? So what it means, divinity, is basically the quality of your mind now. What is the rebirth that comes from that? That's the realm of the divine. And then the practice is what you have to do to get there. Yeah, so these are kind of the things together. And so this is just the Buddha's all-encompassing knowledge of samsaric existence that he said that he achieved before he called himself a Sambuddha. So he claims here to have the full knowledge, which we would expect. Worthy Gautama, I have heard that the ascetic Gautama teaches a path to company of divinity. Please teach me that path. Well then, student, listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. Yes, worthy sir, replied Subha, the Buddha said this. Ding, 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 ding. Exciting. So we'll stop there for 5 minutes and we just do meditation, and then we'll come back to this later on. All right. So there we are. I think at this time it's not too good to have too long meditation, because you know what happens at this time if you try to meditate for too long. Just enough just to relax a little bit. So okay, so are there any comments about this? Anyone would like to ask any questions or anything? Please feel free to do so. Everyone too tired to ask questions? Yeah. Okay, please. Yeah, over here. Good afternoon. You
mentioned that intention is the most important compared with the result action, which is good. So I'd like to bring back the question that the sister raised regarding soldier and shooting.
Right, yeah.
You mentioned that Ajahn recommended you shoot above the head because I think you don't want to kill.
Yeah.
But in this case, if his intention is to save the people that is around him instead of killing, is it good enough?
Yeah. I would say, as long as you are aiming to miss. Yeah, if you are aiming to kill, then it's a problem. Even if your intention is to save, because at that moment your intention is to kill that person.
Intention is to protect.
Yeah, but so that I think that makes the intention less bad. But at that moment, you're still intending to kill that person, and that is the problem. there's two intentions there going on at the same time. One is to kill that person, the other one is to protect the people. Yeah, and so both of those will have karmic results. Yeah, and that is the problem there. You cannot just kill that person purely from compassion for others, because at that moment you are focusing on that person, and the compassion for others will not be the only driving force, but also be a certain degree of. I mean, you probably don't like if you have to protect the others. Probably you have some negativity towards this person as well. So I think it's impossible to have purely, coming purely from the idea of protection in that case. I think there will be some bad karma there. So yeah. But it will be ameliorating. It won't be as bad. If you hate the person, obviously it is a far worse thing. So yeah.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a joke, is it? So okay.
No.
Yeah.
There's a joke. I'm going to add on. Ajahn Chah, I'll tell him to shoot the head. Because he's not marksman, he's going to miss it anyway.
He's going to miss?
He's going to miss shooting the person. So instead of aiming above the head, aim at the head, he's just going to miss.
Okay. The problem is that if you aim for the head and you miss, still make bad karma. That's the problem, right? So, yeah.
May I build on that question? Because I'm thinking like, let's see that I saw a harmful big spider, and I know that room's frequented by a little boy, and then he killed the spider. The intention is to protect the little boy, but in return, going to kill the spider.
Yeah.
Does that mean I create bad karma also by killing the spider?
Yeah, there still is some bad karma there, because that creature, you're still intending to kill that creature, and the motivation to protect the boy, that concerns what you're doing with the boy. But the moment you kill that spider, you also have a negative intention towards that spider. So it's much better to catch the spider and throw him outside, so he can live somewhere else. Or that's kind of the ideal way of doing it. So if you can, instead of killing him. So yes, but it is still better. I mean, because there are many ways of killing that are really bad. You can kill for many reasons. For example, one of the things that are very complicated is the idea of what if someone wants to die? A person wants to die. They've had enough. They come to the end of their life, and they say, "Please, I want to die." Right? If you help that person to die, is that bad karma? Well, in that case, the spider wants to live, so that's kind of bad to kill the spider because it wants to live, right? Just like the person you're shooting in war, they want to live. But this person actually wants to die. So what then? That's kind of a different situation. Well, if they say, "Please die," and you say, "No, I'm not going to help you," that's bad karma to make them live, because you're forcing them to live from bad intention. So in that case, maybe helping someone is not bad. If you're coming from compassion and they want to die, and you say, "Okay, I will," if you really want to die and you had enough, you want to move on, okay, I will help you. If you're coming from a good place, then I think in that case, you're not making bad karma. However, if you're coming from a bad intention, it's bad karma. So this is where intention becomes the entire thing, the thing that really matters, and whether it's good or bad karma. Be very careful though. If someone in that kind of situation, you have to be very, very careful. It's easy to fool oneself and to think that one is doing the right thing. So you really have to know what is driving you in that particular case. Okay, anyone else? Yeah, please. Xiulin, please.
Is Buddha happen to visit VBJ?
Yeah.
Can we ask him question like, "Do you like Musang King durian?"
Can you ask him that kind of question? Yeah, you can.
Because we heard of every time a lot of monks came here, visiting monks. We are not supposed to ask them, "What's your food preference?" Can we ask that?
You can ask. Yeah, you can ask anyone. You can ask monk as well what they like to eat. The monk may not say anything. The monk may prefer not to answer, but you are allowed to ask anything you like. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to ask you. Would you like to have some durian?
I was born in the wrong country to like durian. I was just too... It was a trick question, that's right. Yeah. Over here, please.
Bhante,
you had already. You had the microphone. Okay, good. Yeah.
You mentioned about the purpose of generosity, which is to make people happy, not get angry or bitter.
Yeah.
I want to ask a practical question, which happens to me actually, whereby my auntie, she will empty her refrigerator.
She would, sorry again? She would
empty her refrigerator from all fruits and vegetables because she didn't want to throw it away and create bad karma. And she will put it into my refrigerator.
Okay.
And so now, and then my children will ask, like, Mommy, who will get the bad karma when we throw away the So is it me? Is it us? Or is it her? Or is it partly? Or, you know?
But this is about throwing away food.
All fruits and all vegetables.
Yeah, it's not. There is no bad karma in that. You know, it's just food. You're not killing anyone. You're not killing anything. These are just plants.
It creates anger in me.
This brings anger in you.
Yeah, well, because I know that it's something that she's not wanting it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the problem is not throwing away the fruit. The problem is the anger.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So, but if you change your attitude, you can turn that negative attitude into a positive one. You can make good karma. Now you're making bad karma. You can turn it into good karma if you're wise.
So
I will tell you how to do it.
So
I will tell you how to do it. Wait. I'll tell you how to do it.
Okay.
So what you do when she puts this in the fridge, think of it as an opportunity. It is an opportunity for you to help her. She's your old auntie. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So she's probably old. Maybe it's hard work for her to get rid of it, whatever. Now you have a chance to help her because she doesn't want to throw it away. You can do it for her. So then it becomes an act of generosity. You do it for her. Yeah, you think, oh, old auntie, it's okay. I understand. This is difficult to do. I will gladly do it for you. Then instead of getting angry, you feel happy that you can do an act of service.
So now it's my fault. Anyway,
it's an opportunity.
Yeah. So sometimes I say that, Auntie, my fridge is full.
Yeah.
And then she will put it in another relative's refrigerator.
She probably won't change. That's exactly right. She is stuck in her habits. You know, this is what happens with old people. I guess your auntie must be quite old. Yeah. So stuck in her habits, she will do that. So just change your attitude and see if you can see it as an act of kindness towards her instead. That changes everything around. That is, I think, is the best way here. Remember, one of the I'm not saying it is your fault, because it's no one's fault really. This idea that it is people's fault is also a wrong view. Once we say blame people, blaming is always wrong. It's not about blaming. People are conditioned. They are the way they are because of their background, because of their parents, because of their schooling, because of their past life, because of all of these things. And your old auntie, she doesn't know what she's doing. She just does things automatically like a robot. Ding, one fridge, dick, into another fridge, dick. And so when you see that and you know that it is not a good idea, it's not a nice thing to do to get rid of things in someone else's fridge, but she does things without really understanding that she's doing something which is not so nice. So have compassion for her, for being this old lady who doesn't really see what's going on there, and then this is about changing. This is where the real spiritual growth is, you see. This real spiritual growth is in difficult situations like this. Because when I say this, you think it's really hard to see this in your old auntie. I could tell from your facial expression that you think this is really hard. Straight away I know what you're thinking. You think it's really hard, but actually this is a possibility for you to grow. This is precisely these kind of areas where are difficult like this. Because there is an alternative view of this. The alternative view is the view of the Buddha, which is always to have compassion, always to have metta in all of these situations. People are trapped. People don't know what they're doing. Your auntie is like the light that goes red. Don't get angry with the red light. The red light functions according to a circuit. Every 5 minutes the light goes red. Once a week, your auntie goes red. She puts the food into the fridge. Yeah? This is what happens. She just does that, just like the red light. So have compassion for her. She doesn't really know what's going on. This is the right way. The more bad the person is. I'm sure your auntie isn't that terrible. She maybe does a few dodgy things, but she's probably not the worst mass murderer in history or anything like that. Yeah? And the worse a person is, the more compassion they need, because they don't really understand. Anyone who is a really bad person, they are blind. They are deluded. They are walking in darkness. They have wrong view. They have all of these things wrong with them. How can you not have compassion for a person like that? They are creating enormous amounts of suffering for themselves in the future while they're thinking that they're creating happiness. This is kind of the tragedy for these people. They think, I'm doing something useful that will be good for the future, when in fact all they're doing is creating suffering, especially for themselves, but also a little bit for other people. So change your attitude. This is a golden opportunity for you to change, yeah? See if you can make that change. Please. Turning it into compost. Well, there you are. Yeah, that's another possibility. Yeah, so thinking laterally, thinking in different ways, right? Turning it into compost, maybe, or something like that. Yeah. So absolutely. Okay, let's come back to the sutta again. But no, thank you for these questions. I really appreciate this, and I know that these things sometimes can be a bit personal. But sometimes these personal questions are important. Yeah, and when we talk about them, we can find some sort of solution to these things.